Today we are talking about ticker AIPI and what it would do if you invested $10,000 into this fund that is currently yielding roughly 35% according to their website. I've gotten a ton of requests for this video and I'm happy to do it because this fund seems like a good one. So we're going to do a couple of things today. We're going to go over just the price appreciation, then the distribution history for the fund. We're going to check out the drip calculator, which was pretty insane. The returns have been pretty insane. And lastly, we're going to throw it into a couple different calculations on our reinvestment calculator just to see if this fund is really paying out what they're saying it is and see if it's a decent investment or not. Because as you guys know, I'm looking for some good funds that I'm going to try to use to beat the weekly dividend payer. And AIPI currently pays monthly, which I think is still phenomenal. So with all that being said, if you guys like investing content, if you like dividends, ETFs, stocks, everything involving money, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like the video to let me know that you enjoyed it and to subscribe so you can see all my future content. We've been growing so quickly and I really appreciate it, you guys. I wouldn't be anywhere without you. So with all that being said, let's roll the intro. So AIPI is the Rex AI Equity Premium Income ETF, and we can see the chart isn't terrible, but also isn't great either. It fell in July from $56 all the way down to just under $46, and since then has been trading back up. So that is good. Since that fall, it is up 10.5%. But I'm not sure what this drop-off was due to. Now, I am interested if this is the dividends that are making this thing trade so interestingly. It looks like it has about one dip every single month, which I would assume has to do with the dividends, but I'm not positive on that. This is traded on the NASDAQ, but we've only seen it trading since June 4. So there's not a lot of history. There's not a lot of distributions paid out. We're going to take a look at the distribution history specifically and see what it's paid out and if it's been consistent or not. But I'm really, really interested in what this thing is going to do because it seems like there's a lot of potential. It's got a high distribution rate and a lot of people have been asking me about it. So I'm curious, do you guys like this fund? Let's check out the website and see what details they can give us. So before this one was talked about in comments on many, many different videos, I didn't know what it was all about. You can kind of tell AI Equity Premium Income ETF has something to do with AI, but I didn't know that the distribution rate was 35%, which is insane. Their website's really beautiful. I don't know if I've been to Rex Shares before. I think people have talked about it, maybe not this fund specifically, but this one is interesting because they own AI stocks and write covered calls on them. Now, the reason I think this could be really, really well received in the stock market is because everyone loves AI right now. But because of AI booming, that implied volatility is up. So writing covered calls, you have more implied volatility, but it can also be a downside if we see a downside in the market. But this fund looks really promising. The AUM, or the fund assets, is $137 million. Decent size, not too small, but there's some room for growth there. And then we can also see that the expense ratio is only 0.65%. We've been seeing 0.99, 1.3. We've been seeing some insane expense ratios, especially from the weekly payers. So I'm glad that this one is a lower expense ratio, and their website is really, really beautiful. We'll jump into Seeking Alpha and check out that distribution history. I realized, of course, I've seen the Rex website because FEPI is one of their funds as well, which is the only other one that I'm familiar with. Maybe there's more I should look into, but the dividend history is really solid. They've only paid out 5, ranging from the low of $1.46 to a high of $1.51, the highest being the most recent, which is good. But the dividends are so consistent, very, very consistent, with I think is very, very important. A lot of people with dividend investing are wanting to live off these dividends. They're not using them to reinvest. I use them to reinvest. I reinvest all of my dividends. I'm not pulling any of that money out of my account. But if you are wanting to live off of these distributions, you want consistent income. And so far, AIPI has been doing that really solidly, even after the dip, which I think is hard to do. Now, one thing that is really, really important too is just because they paid out these last 5 months doesn't mean it's going to continue. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to calculate the yield for you guys and see how close their declared yield is to my actual calculated one. So a quick calculation, I added all of the dividends together and we got $7.39 paid out over 5 months. So to get our average, I divided that by 5, which gives us our monthly return. So now I'm going to multiply this by 12, and that is going to give us $17.73, closer to 74. So $17.74. And what we're going to do is we're going to divide this by 50, which is the current share price, 50.67, and then we're going to multiply that by 100 to get our percentage, and we have a 35% distribution rate, which is insane. So they are accurate. They are very, very accurate. And so the beauty of this is now I don't have to do a just return calculation versus their calculation. This is accurate. So all that being said, let's jump into the drip calculator and we'll see what this fund has returned so far. So I'm on dividendchannel.com. We're using their drip calculator. We're going to chart this with 10K invested, and the return has been pretty insane. So the total return so far is just under 16%. But again, it's only been trading for, 5-6 months. So your annualized return is 32.28% with distributions reinvested. And that is key. With them not reinvested, you're still yielding a 29%, almost 30% return. So it's not even that big of a difference, but still, we've seen some red, we've seen it back up in the green. And so after that crazy dip, that would have been the perfect time to purchase, but we can't go back in time. So this thing trailing all the way up to this really insane, very impressive return, it's making me consider buying into this one. I already know that FEPI is one I've been looking at. I wonder if these Rex ones have a lot more potential than people are giving them credit for. This one might be pretty solid. If you can return 30% a year and not have any NAV erosion, we don't see any NAV erosion here, might be something worth looking into. Let's throw this into our $10,000 invested calculation and see how much money this thing can actually make us. All right, so we are in the dividend calculator from MarketBeat. I really like how this one functions. We can see I have AIPI already put in here. We have individual stock, pays monthly, and drip is on. Because again, we're not talking about pulling the money out. We're talking about what you could do if you invested 10K over a certain number of years. So we're going to go 1, 5, 10, 20, 30, and see exactly how much you can make from just $10,000 invested, even though that is a lot of money for a lot of people, and me included. So I have number of shares in 197.35. That's based on a 10K investment, with the share price being $50.67. We're not adding any money. There's no dividend tax rate, and there's no tax exempt anything because we're doing everything in a Roth. That's how I trade. So that's where I'm putting this, as if we don't have to pay taxes on it. If you do pay taxes on it, factor that into your calculation. The initial annual dividend yield is what we've seen, a 35% yield. So 0 dividend increases, 0 share price appreciation. We're just going based off the dividends because I don't know if this thing's going to go up or down. So if you think the share price is going to go up, this is just going to be a bonus. Anything the share price does is going to be a bonus on top of this distribution. So after 1 year invested, we can see that we now have $14,119 in the account. We have seen an average annual return of 41% because drip is on and it is monthly. And so we see annual dividend income is $5,816, and our total dividend payment over 1 year is $3,499. This was expected because we know $10,000 investment at a 35% rate, you're going to get $3,500. Now, this annual dividend income is what we're going to get now that we've reinvested this $3,400. So that's going to continue to increase. If we kick this up to 5 years, your ending balance after 5 years from 10K invested initially is now $56,000, total return of 461%. And now annually, you are getting $23,000 in dividends, which is crazy. Over the 5 years, you've made $40,000 in dividends. You've 4x'd your money on just the dividends alone, and it's just going to keep getting crazier. Putting in 10 years, we can see after 10 years, now that's a long time to have money invested into one thing. And if this thing does trade sideways, I always get people in the comments, oh, it's not going to trade sideways, blah, blah, blah. I know that, but I can't factor that in. I can't factor in NAV erosion because, one, we haven't seen NAV erosion for this fund specifically, but I can't factor in things that I don't know. So I'm just going based off of the distributions they've paid out. And if they're able to continue that, that would be phenomenal. And these are the results that you would get. Ending balance, 10K invested for 10 years. You have almost $315,000. A 3,000% return over 10 years is still very, very solid. Annual dividend income is now $130,000. $130,000 is more than most households in the U.S. make. So that is absolutely insane. And the total dividends you've been paid, $260,000. Because remember, drip is on. So all these dividends, you're now adding $130,000 into the fund every time, because this is how much money you're getting paid out. But your initial investment was only $10,000. And this is when it starts getting crazier and crazier and crazier. At year 15, we have $1.7 million, a 17,600% return. Annual dividend income is $730,000, just under that. And your dividends paid over 15 years after, with drip included, of course, $1.5 million. Now, when I do this with a lot of the yield max funds, I think it's not realistic. But if this thing continues to yield like it has, the the distributions have been consistent, and that's key. You don't have one that's huge that's throwing off these numbers like we'll see often. So 10K invested for 20 years, $10 million. 9.9 million is your final return, or your end balance. Your total return is 99,000%, which is insane. Annual dividend income, $4 million, and total dividend payments over the last 20 years, $8.4 million. And this isn't even our final calculation. With 30 years, let's say you are 25, you want to retire at 55, you invest 10K into AIPI, and it yields consistently 35%. No price appreciation. You have it in a tax-exempt account. You're in a retirement account, so you're not paying taxes on it. After 30 years, you have $312 million in your account with an average annual return of 41%, total return of 3 million. Oh, man. Yeah, 3 million% return. Now, this is where it gets just so unrealistic. Yes, it's probably not going to do this, but it's still fun to look at the numbers. Annual dividend income is now $128 million, more money than a lot of people make in their lifetimes. You're making every single year, and your total dividend payment over 30 years is $256 million. You have made $256 million in dividends alone. Yield on cost, 911,000%. Absolutely insane. So again, take this with a grain of salt. That's what these calculations are for. They're supposed to be motivating and fun, and that's why I do them. So if you guys enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.